いいと思うっていうか、だって実質そうなんだからさ。
Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Yami.
And the topic of the day is woke washing. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or drop a review on what platform you're listening on. And if you feel so inclined, support us on Ko-Fi. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, woke washing. Later this year, Ubisoft will be releasing Assassin's Creed Shadows, an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan. The announcement of this upcoming title sparked outrage because the main character is black. This is not like a made-up main character. This is a historical figure that I doubt you might have heard of him, but the name of the person that is based on is called Yasuke. If you check out that link over there, there's a detailed history about Yasuke, but generally he is seen to be, he was a slave, I think, taken in after a battle was lost, and he was taken in, and it's a story about how basically he climbed ranks and ended up becoming a bushi. So this is a historical account. This isn't also the first time that this character has been featured in media. There was an anime a while ago. I cannot remember. It was like there's a musician who commissioned it or was working on it, I believe, or voice acting or something, but also by the same name. I picked pictures as well for you to see them. Now, the reason this sparked outrage, actually, have you heard of the term whitewashing? We might have talked about it once on the show before.
なんか、whitewash って言われて、ってなったけど、なんか、ついさっき思い出したのが、確か最近だと、なんだっけ、ハリーポッターの、ハーマイオニーが舞台上だと、黒人の人がやってたりとか、あと、映画とかで、なんか、みんな映画会社が、白人じゃなくて、なんか、いろんなね、多種多様な、人種を使おうということで、非難されたくないから使ってるみたいな感じのイメージで、ね、なんかそういう流行ってるみたいなの聞いたことがある。合ってますか
？Well, that would be kind of the term that I've seen thrown out called woke washing. Whitewashing is when you do the reverse, where you have like a white person in the role of a person who originally was not white. So, for example, I know we mentioned before, but I'm not sure in this context. We talked about Ghost in the Shell, an instance of this is the one that debatably the android or whatever you want to call the main character Ghost in the Shell is a Japanese android or whatever you want to call it. And then Scarlett Johansson acted as her, and that caused a bunch of problems. But that would be considered whitewashing. Where woke washing is where the idea that you're basically putting in. It doesn't have to be in movies. It could be in anything. Kind of pretending or doing some small act on behalf of some larger historic, issue, racial justice issue, but it either conflicts with the values of your company because your company is supporting those things, or it's just very shallow and just made on just for consumerism's sake. So they're only doing it to try to get more sales. So this outrage happened around because I think some people aren't aware that Yasuke is a historical figure, so they thought they just chose to have a story set in Japan and made up a black character. But what I'm assuming, since you don't know anything about that and didn't know about Yasuke, do you have any initial thoughts about are you familiar with the Assassin's Creed series? Or is the first time you're hearing about this?
Yeah. Assassin's Creed? これゲームだよね?
Yes.
いや、もう知らない。I'm not a gamer だし。これ、最近リリースされて、黒人さんの侍を使うみたいな感じなんだよね。
No, Assassin's Creed is a very old series, relatively speaking. It's had a bunch of installments. I think it's going to be the 14th version. You're basically an assassin who goes around killing people in history. History is always a big aspect of Assassin's Creed, and they spend a lot of money and research and accurately creating a world that's as realistic as we know, representing a different location. So this is in the Sengoku period, and yes, the main character is Yasuke, who I told you you're reading about him right now. And there's also, I can't remember the name of the female lead. There's another female lead who's Japanese as well. Do you feel, I mean, maybe you're not as familiar with this topic, but do you have any initial thoughts on having a story, focusing on this specific story in Japan versus other ones? I don't think most Japanese people are very aware, care about anything like that, but I'm wondering, do you have any feelings like, oh man, why aren't they doing a story about the Japanese, Nobunaga for the billionth time?
これ聞いてどう思うかってこと？
Yes.
いや、別にもう面白い観点があっていいんじゃないですか。なんかいつもさ、だいたい大河ドラマとかだと、なんかそういう、有名どころのさ、織田信長とか、豊臣秀吉、徳川家康とか、あといろんな、ね、他の戦国時代で業績を上げたね、武士たちとかの、家族であったり、なんか人生とか、なんかそういうのが取り上げられて、なんか NHK の大河ドラマっていうのが、あったりしてたり、あと、ドラマとかでもあるんだけど、ドラマ映画とかでもあるんだけど、多分、日本の映画を見てないからかわかんないけど、今まで、その日本人以外のなんか戦国武士を取り上げた、ドラマであったり、映画っていうのは見たことないから、新しい、なんていうの？映画の流行りのなんかきっかけとなっていいんじゃないですか？
Have you heard of a show called Shogun? We were watching it in the lazyfluency Discord, but you normally don't watch Japanese television. And do you remember? I think I put some images of Shogun here. Does this ring any bells? Have you seen?
このなんか将軍のこの一番左、待って、今ちょっと写真見ててね、日本人の俳優さんがなんだっけ、プレイしてるってなんて言うんだっけ、役をやってるだけど、この人なんだっけ、名前忘れちゃったけど、浅野なんとかかな。
His actual name or
yeah, so
I'm not sure. He plays Toranaga-sama, which is like it's also Sengoku period or like early 1600s.
この人すごく有名で、いろんななんかハリウッド映画とか結構出てる人。
Yes, I looked at his history. He's quite he's a long history, and he did a whole bunch.
インセプションとか出てなかったっけこの人？違うかな？
I would not know.
なんかちょっとインセプションは違うわ、あの人だ。渡辺謙だ。けどこの人もすごくなんかいろんなハリウッド映画ね、結構すごく有名どころのハリウッドの映画とか出てる人だからすごいね。なんか多分将軍ってさ、日本の映画会社が作ってるわけじゃないじゃん、多分。そうだよね。
Yeah, exactly.
で、ちゃんとなんか日本人のなんか有名な俳優を採用してたりね、して面白いけど、なんか真ん中の人は私将軍見てないかわかんないけど、白人の人がこれはアパレンティスなの
？No, the funny. So the show, he's actually the main character. Well, I would say he's the main character of the show. He goes by Anjin. He's called Anjin-sama or Anjin. Yeah, he's like a pilot. When Anjin's like an archaic way to refer to pilots, apparently. But yeah, that doesn't really, the details don't matter so much. But this was a show that was really, really popular. Like I said, we were watching it in the Discord, and I heard no complaints about Shogun. In fact, everybody just loved Shogun. And they're like, wow, this is such a good story. But to me, I find it so funny. This was like, oh my gosh, like Shogun just ended. It's like 2 weeks later, maybe 3 or maybe a month later. Sorry. And then the exact same thing, basically, same period. Seems like a very similar story. Shogun is also about a story about a guy who is a foreigner coming in and rising the ranks and becoming a warrior. Literally, it's basically the same story. And I don't want to spoil too much about Shogun, but the parallels from what I've seen of Yasuke and Anjin, I can't remember his actual English name in the show, the everybody refers to him as Anjin. Oh gosh, seems so incredibly similar. And they're both based off actual historical people. And I don't remember, I think I don't know who has more details about them. From what I understand, both of the knowledge of what happens about these two characters is not like massively in depth. But obviously, you can tell one of them is white, Yasuke is black, and then obviously because of that, I feel like it sparked this whole controversy.
なんかさ聞いたのがさ、 まあ、なんだっけ、ウォークワッシ
？Woke washing.
ュ、ウォークワッシングっていうのが、まあ、あれでしょ、黒人さんとか、まあ、なんだ、ラテン系とかを、なんか、映画の主人公として取り上げることでしょ？
No, it would be doing so for only for the purposes of trying to, maybe some social justice issue or trying to take advantage of the market, basically. Like it's not a genuine interest, and it actually doesn't elevate or have any purpose other than doing it. That's like what woke washing. Mm-hmm. Do you think Shogun or Yasuke would be examples of woke washing?
将軍は私はそのエピソードをよく知らないからわかんないけど、安家はだって実際に存在してないのか。
No, both Shogun and Yasuke Anjin, the person who's based off, and Yasuke, the person who this upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows are based off of, are real people. They existed. They're historical figures.
安家って黒人だよね。
Yes. You can have, there's little
だから別にその実際の人物をさ、描写するために実際と同じ、肌の色のキャラクターにするのはいいと思うというか、だって実質そうなんだからさ、そうせざるを得ないじゃん。けどさっきも言ったようになんて言うんだろう、なんかイメージってあるじゃん。例えばアニメとかはわかんないけど、なんかキャラクターのイメージでこういう人は例えばなんだろうね、なんだろう。ハーマイオニー、もうこれもちょっとハリーポッターの話になっちゃうんだけど、ハーマイオニーってさ、もともとエマ・ワトソンがさ、なんか、もうプレイしててさ、その白人っていうイメージがついちゃってるじゃん。だし、なんか、JK ローリングもさ、もうなんか、多分、ワイトの人がハーマイオニーっていうイメージも持ってたと思うんだよ。けど、なんか、なんだろう。大衆の非難を買わないために、なんか舞台で、そうやってなんか、気使って黒人の人をなんか採用するっていうのはまたちょっと違うのかなっていう。なんかジェニュインじゃない気がする、そういう動機として。
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I remember that there was, there was a black Hermione? Was that what you're talking about? Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, I have no clue what the situation is, but I generally am somebody for example, the Ghost in the Shell thing. I'm like, although I understand that there's like a, how I can see is there's, maybe a general underrepresentation or, certain, groups of people not being given advantages and roles, which ends up impacting them financially, which is the whole thing. But when it comes to the actual final product, I'm all about what actually represents the image of the character, and I do think the way the character looks matters across the board, whether it be like white, brown, and even though I know whiteness isn't entirely has as much history or whatever, but people do have the images of the characters, and I do believe all the aspects of the characters, like the kind of hat they wear, the skin color they have, plays an overall in the image. I'm not saying you can't change it, but if I was being played by a white dude, if I was being played by a white dude, or if I was white and I imagined for some reason I was like being played by, an Indian dude or a Japanese dude, I'd feel very weird about it. Even if it is fiction, but in this case, we're not even talking about fiction. Yeah, I in my head, it's like, just tell a different story or tell an equally good story. I'm not really a huge fan of like, unless your whole brand is like, having a bunch of different versions of something like Marvel or whatever. But Harry Potter doesn't seem to be that as well. But yeah, you actually mentioned something with anime that I wanted to touch on, because for one, I don't think most Japanese people care or even know about Yasuke. Nor. But the other thing is, we've mentioned this before a little bit, which is anime characters. Characters in anime. And I know you don't watch that much anime, but do you think, or I guess, how much do you think Japanese people think about like race when they're watching anime? This is to say, like, okay, for example, Naruto? Do you have a picture of Naruto in your head if you think of Naruto?
だいたいなんかアニメのキャラクターっていうのをさ、ちょっとなんて言うんだろうね、可愛くとかかっこよくしたいくて、で、だいたいなんて言うんだろう。目の形であったり、なんか顔の特徴をなんか彫り深くって言うんだけど、彫り深いっていうのが、彫り深いでhow do you say？なんか、
deep。
そう、deep。なんて言うんだろうね。日本人ってさ、やっぱり、 アジア人か。そう、アジア人っていうのはやっぱりさ、まあ、西洋の人から比べたらさ、まあ、スモールノーズだし、まあ、スモールアイズかもしれないし、あと、なんか横から見たらちょっと平らに見えるみたいな、なんか平たい顔族っていう、自分たちで自虐してるんだけど、まあ、まあ、アニメでは、なんか、より、なんて言うんだろうね、彫り深く、なんて言うんだろう、描いたりとか、まあ、肌がだいたい、まあ、白かったりとか、髪の毛が、金髪とか明るめの色とか、目はめちゃめちゃでかいとかね。なんかそれってさ、なんかちょっとあんまりアジア人っぽくない特徴じゃん。でもそっちの方がなんか可愛いとかかっこいいとかって思われてて、で、そういう漫画アニメっていうのが、まあ主流な感じがする。で、まあ今ここにセーラームーンの、なんか絵みたいなのがあるんだけど、なんか大体、そうね。まあ、セーラームーンって、まあ、知ってる人のが、まあ、多いと思うんだけど、肌は白くて、髪の毛は長くて、金髪と。なんか、これって絶対、日本人だったらまあ、日本人だったらっていうのもあれだけど、まあ、あまり見ないね。古くから言われてる日本の人の特徴ではないじゃん。
Yeah.
そう。で、そう、だから、なんかこういった、なんていうの、そのアニメとかっていうのは、だいたい、あんまり日本人、ザ・日本人みたいな、キャラクターは、まあ、少ないのかな。でも最近だと学園ものとかになってくるとさ、結構、スナフとかだと結構男の子めっちゃ日本人だよねって思う。
Yeah, it definitely depends on the genre, but even what you mean, like, Snafu, I would say like the hair color style and like facial, like there's like my stance on this is I feel like the more you look, although you can choose some examples that seem more or less Western, define that however you want. Most of the time it's like a big combination of stuff. And I feel like when it comes to like, this might be just a whole side tangent, but although I can think of maybe, although I'm assuming there are some shows where race plays a big role in the narrative, the vast majority I can think of that it's not a topic that comes up at all. And do you think that Japanese people, if they see Naruto or Sailor Moon, they identify them as being Japanese? Like if you...
いや、別にね、ジャパニーズ、なんだろうね。
Like,
難しいね。
they're one of your own. You know what I'm saying? You're watching Sailor Moon, you're a Japanese girl. You're like, I am being represented on the screen. Or do you think it's like, that is someone, I don't know, what else would the thought be? In my head, it seems like, if I don't know what it would be, obviously be a Japanese girl watching Sailor Moon, but my feeling is when I see them with all their toys and stuff, they don't feel like they're not one of them.
なんだろう。私にとっては、まあこういうセーラームーンとか見て、別に、なんて言うんだろう。自分と重ね合わせるとかっていうもんじゃなくて、なんか、なんだろうね。架空の、人物だからとか言って怒られるけど、なんだろう、アニメはアニメっていう、なんか、処理がちゃんと脳の中でできてるから、別になんか日本人っぽく見えるとか、いや、またして、外国人っぽく見えるとかっていうのは、なんだろうね。パッと見一瞬の判断ではそこまでの、なんて言うんだろう、深い、洞察みたいなのはないけど、でも考えてみて、まあ日本人と、まあ外国人どっちの方が、近いって言われたら、まあよく考えると、日本人っぽくないよねとはなる。けど、やっぱり、まあ架空の人物は架空の人物だから、もう一つのジャンルとして、日本人、外国人、じゃなくて、また違うカテゴリーに私は当てはめる、こういう場合。
Are you aware of any examples of there being a Japanese show or drama that's focusing on let's say, what would this be in reverse? It'd be like focusing on, so we're talking about a black character in Japan. So I guess the equivalent would be, gosh, I don't know what the equivalent would be. A Japanese person in America? Maybe that wouldn't be, the racial dynamics aren't the same. I don't even know what kind of, it's so hard to even I'm not even sure how to make the same parallel. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the same level of
なんだろうね。なんか例えばさ、学園ものって大体中学校とか高校じゃん。でさ、その中にクラスメートでさ、なんか黒人が40人中20人いますとかさ、まあアニメが出てきたとするよ。それはちょっとさすがに やりすぎっていうかなんて言うんだろう。現実とさ、かけ離れすぎて、逆に違和感覚えちゃうから、なんていうの、批判であったりさ、ちょっとそれは違うんじゃないってなると思うし、ねって感じかな。
You're saying if like there was one that existed, I can't really think of any show that has an entire, except for, oh gosh, what is it called? Afro Samurai is a thing, but that's, what is it? There's also one on Adult Swim. I can't remember, Boondocks as well, which is not an anime, but it was like anime inspired, like stylistically. But I don't know. I guess I don't know if that'd even be the same thing, or I don't know if Japanese people would have. I feel like they're pretty good as far like we just talked about her anime. Almost all the people, a lot of anime are all white. Basically, they're more, or at least more white than Japanese, and that's not causing Japanese people to throw a fit. Right, and be like, why isn't there more Japanese representation in my anime? Like, I can pull up the cast of like My Hero Academia.
ジブリも結構洋風なの多くない？まあ、ホタルの墓はめっちゃなんか日本のさ、戦争のあれだから、日本風だけど、まあ、私が大好きなハウルの城であったり、アリエッティとかさ、あと、なんだろう。あと何があったっけ？まあ、トトロは、まあ、日本っぽいか。メイちゃんと、なんだっけ？
Except for the house.
あ、そうなんだ。
And right, how many people do you know who have a Totoro house?
トトロハウスはちょっとあんま覚えてないけど。
Currently searching up Totoro house for those who do not know. For IME to know what the Totoro house looks like.
ああ、なるほどね。結構ジブリ、そうね、なんかジブリのさ、絵の描き方としてさ、なんだろう、ちょっと洋風、建物とか結構洋風だよね。あと、建物の中の内装とか。けど、最近見た、君たちはどう生きるかの、まあ、メインの、塔じゃない方、これ言っていいのか。普通の家、メインの方の家は日本風だったよね。
Yes, I believe. Well, yeah, that was more historical. I'm still in my head thinking about some example of. Can you think of anything where there's been a situation where they made it Japan, like there was outrage about Japanese people telling a specific story that they, like isn't, would it be not Japanese enough or not focusing on something Japanese care about? I'm not entirely sure. Like the most recent I've heard about these culture wars, I think was in our Fire episode, obviously when immigration is becoming bigger. Maybe if you, hold up. How about a lead role actor in a Japanese famous movie that isn't Japanese or something? Has that ever happened? Like a movie, maybe the main character of like an actual film, not animated, being like non-Japanese. Maybe that's not happening because they wouldn't be speaking Japanese. But my point is, I guess, is that there's a lot of like fake outrage around people being like, well, like, how do Japanese people feel about this? And I really feel like, well, for one, Japanese people just don't consume the same stuff. I never heard Japanese people even drop the name Assassin's Creed. I didn't know what it is. Where in the US, I feel like it'd be pretty well known. And then, in addition to that, if they did even think about it, I'd be like, gosh, all of anime is places in Japan with white people, or a lot of it. Not that there aren't Japanese people, but so yeah, I don't know. It feels super racial to me, in a bad way. Racist, maybe I should say. To put so much emphasis on it, and I think the way you pointed out, even though it wasn't intentional, you're like, well, wouldn't it be weird if you had an anime with a bunch of black people? And my head is like, well, a lot of anime is just a bunch of white people. Although there's examples where it's not the case. Yeah. Did you have any additional thoughts on this topic?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back. Maybe the outrage will come up when the game actually releases. 戻りました。
We're back.
昨日初めてゴーカートをしました。あゆみの感想は？
Yeah, it was good experience. So like I don't have a driver's license. Surprise!
私も免許持ってない。でも13歳の時、
You can't say that.
まあ言えるかな。わかんない。
But anyways, so yeah, this also we went to go-kart with our friends, and it was for the first time to try go-kart, and I was pretty nervous because I've never driven a car. So I was worried if I crash a car or not. And we had like 3 rounds, and first round I was going really slow because I didn't want to drive really fast, and there were so many curves in the course. There were probably 5 or 6 curves, and but yeah, from the second and the last third one, I think I got better, so I feel like I can finally drive a proper car, not go-kart. Yeah, after this experience.
なんか私10年以上運転し始めてたんだけど、なんかその習ってから本当になんかその運転する機会が完全になくて、というかみんなは知ってると思うんですけど、私車大嫌い。でもそれはなんかただ自分の日常に関してなんか車大嫌い。でもゴーカートが嫌いというわけではなくて、なんかめっちゃ楽しくて、でも思ったんだけど、その運転することとゴーカートはなんか似てるのかな。私は完全にやらなかったんですけど、他の友達、あいみ以外は全然いつも運転してるし、ドイツ人の友達もいて、免許を持ってるよね。でも私の中では一番早かったのはなんか上手、もう慣れついた以外は私だった。ってことはなんか逆に運転することで自分がなんかルールをいつも守ってるから、そのルールを守りすぎてちゃんとなんかゴーカートできないことってある？それともなんかわかる？私は逆に経験がなかったからなんか
so your friend was also like joining yesterday, and then he said that so he drives like every day to go to work, and since the town he lives in is pretty much car centered city, so like there are so many cars and then so many accidents every day, so he said he didn't want to like make it faster because he knows how dangerous it is to run with 100 kilometers per hour とか。
でも逆に私の場合だと、そういうその自転車に乗ってる経験と歩行者としての経験あるんですけど、もちろんそういう実際に車に乗って他の人を殺そうとする経験はないので、私ゴーカートに入った時なんか早く行きたかっただけ、なんか走りたかっただけ、でそれをメインにして不安あったんだけど、もちろん安全と最も大事なのはもしなんか問題があったらゴーカートを壊したら私たちなんか代金払わないといけないことになったんだけど、実はそれは一番の心配。それ以外のことに関しては、安全というよりも速さに集中したので、なんかもっと早くできたんだけど、でどう最初の3つのラウンドがあったんだけど、だんだん慣れてきたの。
Yeah, I guess I improved a lot from the first round. 違う。So in the third round compared to the first round. And yesterday we played a card game until 1 a.m. So sorry I look tired and sleepy, but yeah, that is why.
それもあるね。でも何でしたっけ、 ゴーカートに関してはその一番自分のなんか速さを阻んだっていうか、遮るかなわかんない。なんか不安か、自分がなんかちゃんとコントロールできないこととか、なんか何が一番なんか難しかったのかな。
I didn't want to get injured first, and second, I didn't want to break the car or crash. So, yeah, that's why. Yeah.
うん。個人的になんか最初はそういう不安があったんですけど、なんか速く走るためになんかすごく上手な人がいて、実はなんかトーナメントを最近勝ったと言ったんですけど、話した時に、いや、このところとこのところと、なんかあそこはなんか完全にブレーキを使わなくていいよみたいなことを言った時に、ってことはブレーキを使わなくていいと言ってるってことは、私もできるんじゃないかと思って、もちろん経験ないんだけど、なんか怖がることなんか何もない。なんかで、その人だけじゃなくて他のもちろん経験者がいて、で、なんか何回も同じ部分をブレーキを、なんていうか、踏まずに、その曲がりができたから、それなんか見て、私もできるんじゃないかと思ったけど、でもどうなんかわかる？
Yeah. So there was my friend who won the championship of this go-kart like 1 week ago, and then he gave us advice, and I followed his advice. Like when you want to like curve like this, like to the right, to the left, you want to tilt your body and make the center juicing.
Was it centrifugal force?
Yeah, to the outer side, so that the
center of gravity, juicing center of gravity.
Yeah, to make 遠心力.
Yeah, to make it centrifugal force. Stronger or something? Basically pull you into the turn better.
Yeah. So if you're going like this, you want to tilt your body like this, like to the right, when you want to curve to the left.
左に曲がるときは右に傾けるかな。で、右に曲がるときは左に傾けること。で、とりあえずいい経験だった。And we're back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. And this week we have a question from one of our MVP commenters, Oddity. And this was about teachers and their role in language learning. And the comment goes as follows. I'm with Joey on this one. I think teachers are irreplaceable, and that's coming from someone who's managed to successfully pick up various skills by self-learning. However, this success is due in part to having teachers who instilled learning techniques, which I used on my own later on. In this sense, I also don't think it matters much if the teachers are good or bad. If their methodology sucks, then you know what to avoid and what doesn't work for you. But as Joey said, I think there's something to be learned even from methodologies that supposedly suck. For language learning specifically, I think the biggest upside of having a teacher is having someone to correct you. As someone who's learning Japanese on her own, my biggest fear is always that I'll learn something wrong, most probably a grammar point, because there's nobody to correct me, and by the time I realize it's wrong, it'll already be hardwired, and those are very hard to get rid of. One word about effective learning. It's been talked about on the podcast a lot, but I'd like to add that people who are constantly preoccupied with finding the most effective way to learn a language are just after an instant gratification. Language learning is kind of a never-ending process and the more time you spend optimizing, the less time you spend actually learning. Cheers. Thank you for the comment. And I don't know if you have any specific thoughts on, like I told you, like you talked about your own specific teachers thing, but have you ever had a feeling of like with English, you said it sometimes that you're not like feeling confident with English grammar. Do you actually think you benefit from someone pointing out mistakes while you're speaking?
なんか個人的にはなんか自分が間違いした時にはポイントアウトしてほしい。なんでかっていうとそれによってさ学ぶことができるし。ね、フィードバックって必要じゃん。何の学習にしろ。で、そのままフィードバックもなしにさ、ずっとやってたらさ、それが正しい、言い方、正しい道だと思っちゃうから、そのままずっと突き進んじゃって、軌道修正できないまま、 間違った言い方をもう、ここから先ずっと言っちゃうから、それの方が恥ずかしいし、間違ってるからね。だから、個人的には、その都度言ってほしいかな。でも、なんて言うんだろう。あんまりにも細かいこと、なんだろう。例えばさ、ちょっと細かいことかもしれないけど、I have ってさ、I've って書けるし言えるじゃん。けど、formal なんとかだと、なんとかI've とは使っちゃダメだよとか、いちいち突っ込んでくるやつはちょっと無理。わかる。
Yeah, I feel interesting or conflicted about the benefits of pointing something out to somebody. One part I feel that most people with enough exposure will catch most things, except things that don't exist in the language, which can be very difficult. On the other hand, I feel there's some part of language learning as well where people have a sense of self into the words they choose, and for one reason or another, they just don't like using the terms that a Japanese person would use. I have this with, and suppose using incorrect grammar or anything being incorrect. There's definitely some ways of speaking that I just don't like in Japanese. One I can think of is I don't use boku or ore intentionally because I don't like that they kind of have, if for people familiar with them, they're first person pronouns, and boku tends to be used for younger men, can be children as well, self-identify instead of watashi, and then ore is used by typically older men, but more specifically men who have greater status. Or if you're with your friends, you can be equal status but young, they're either everybody's young or everybody's old. But in a situation where there are old people and you have young people who previously called themselves ore might have to change that because there's somebody now who's greater status. And I don't like using words that automatically infer my status onto somebody else. One of our friends yesterday was actually talking about how he didn't feel comfortable calling some of your friends chan because of the same reason. Because by them using chan, the German friend, by them using chan, they're automatically forcing the other person to say that they're close with them, if that makes any sense. By one of our friends using chan, I mean, you might remember, this is the German friend.
And then chan って使いたくないって。
Yeah, because by using chan, you're basically the other person is being assumed into a state of closeness.
そっかそうだね。なんとかちゃんって最初から会ったばっかりで使うと、でもそうでもないな。多分学校とかいうセッティングだったら別にウェイルドじゃないけど、例えば、職場とかで、いきなり初対面の人になんとかちゃんとか言われて、みたいになる。ちょっと、ってなるけど、同世代だったら別に私は許せるっていうか、違和感ないかな。けど、例えば、あとそうだね。違う、性別、私だったら、男の人から初対面で、あやみちゃんとか言われたら、みたいな、なるかな。だけど、それね、感じ方も人によって違うから、あれだけど、日本で、なんて言うんだろう、典型的なのは、職場とかで初めて会った人とか、あんまり、なんていうの、どっちも相手のこと知らない場合だったら、なんとかさんで、下の名前でもいいけど、大体上の名前かな。ごめん。家族の名前じゃない、ファミリーネームじゃなくて、名字。名字でさん、田中さん、佐藤さんとかね。かな?
Yeah. So that was just one example, but I did want to mention in terms of, let's assume that there are things that can't be picked up by the learner, which I think probably do exist. I do think that it is also a balance of benefit, where for one, I don't believe anything gets perma instilled, like the fossilization. From all examples I can see, fossilization, it's always a matter of someone not being not being an important thing to them to care to learn. But if you care about it, you can unfossilize yourself. So I don't really think fossilization is the correct term. Obviously it's more difficult to do so, but I don't think there's anything in language learning that you can't fix if you really wanted to put the effort into it. But the other thing is, pointing out a bunch of mistakes to me is kind of like giving somebody 20 different instructions, at the same time. And really, if I give you 20 instructions that let's say we are like we're trying to assemble like a chair or something. I give you instructions for the chair. Like either one, I give you one, I know, like, you're trying to set up the chair and I, say, okay, step 1, do this. And then I say, step 2, do this. Or I go, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. And I go all the way to 20 and I say, go. Like, which one do you think of those is going to be more helpful? No, I'm saying the first one, I just tell you one step and then you can focus on step 1. And the other ones, I tell you 20 steps at the same time. Yeah, exactly. And so that's how I feel about when I'm like tutoring people as well. Or if somebody really were to tell you, or to me was really to tell me every like minor mistake I was making in Japanese as I was speaking, it'd be like 1, way too many things to focus on one time, but 2, also literally obstructing the total amount of Japanese occurring in the conversation in general.
でもなんかさ、なんか間違いを指摘する側もさ、なんか毎回指摘するとちょっとさ、なんていうの、かわいそうっていうかなんていうんだろうね、に思えちゃって、通じればいいかなっていう時もあるんだよね。でも最近起こったのが、ある友達がプログラムなんかカレッジプログラムのことをカレッジの番組みたいな言っててで、毎回番組って言ってたけど、でも通じるからいいかなと思って、そんな毎回指摘はしないんだけどね。から個人的には私が訂正するサイドだったら通じればいいと思うから、あんまり毎度言わないけど、なんて言うんだろう、その本人が将来というかこの先なんていうの、そういう間違いを言って恥ずかしい思いをしないために何回か言うのもありかなとは思います。
Yeah, this episode is a little shorter because we're running short on time this week. But for those who are wondering where the transcript is, oh my God, there have been so many mic problems. It's been insane. We're trying to get this. I've had 3 returned. We're trying to get another one in. Hopefully it can be in by the next time. And also resuming, if anybody's wondering what's going on with the main channel video, I had a bunch of friends come over, try and have a good time in Japan. We're back to normal on the editing grind. So that is exciting. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us, another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com and we might respond in the next episode. Also, consider supporting us on Ko-Fi to get video updates, Discord access, and or to just lend a hand. And finally, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Yami.
Signing off. じゃあねー。